First, this is my personal story and opinion. I don't say these words to make anyone feel bad about themselves or sorrow for me, or indeed not to lose their religion. I think the more that people can share their stories, the more that people may come to an understanding of others that may not be like them or may not have grown up like them. I know I have revealed in some of my other videos the fact about growing up gay in a home and environment that loved to quote the Bible and the man that wrote it, and also enjoyed having ministers blaring on the radio every morning before school. Honestly, it was probably 3 years into college before I started really questioning and looking into this book that I've been reading religiously, nightly, trying to make sense of it. I came to these conclusions. It was really not difficult. The first thought was realizing that other men, not magic men, I don't believe in magic men, had authored these individual books. Remember too that they had to be wealthy men because books were quite expensive back then. Also, some other men found these individual books and decided to put some of the books together and call it the Bible. And over many years, there have been corrections to previous interpretations from the first translation from one language to another based on further insights. So then we end up with many different versions of the Bible, some with more books than others. And I think I may even have about 5 or 6 versions due to the fact that when I was coming to terms with being gay, I have had friends and family think it the very gift I needed to set me straight. It's not the Bible that I have a problem with. It's a book. Because there are some very loving thoughts and ideals to live by. But then when I look at some particulars of what these men wrote back then, I am appalled that people think those words would come from a loving God, even claiming that these men's words are the word of God. Mind you, I'm not appalled by the man that wrote those words back then. They were their stories, whether fact, fiction, or horror. But so many of the stories, such as the idea that God asked Abraham to kill his own son to show his love of God. And I don't have to go into the gory details, but it even went as far as he raised the knife to sacrifice his son. Can you imagine that? For just 1 second, a God that is requesting of us that his greatest command is to love one another is so prideful that he requests you kill your son to prove you love him more. I don't see a God doing that. And like I have said, this is not about asking anyone to lose your faith in a supreme being. Whether you call him God, Allah, Yahweh, Brahman, or you go through an enlightened one called Buddha, whatever your faith. I've read many parts of different religious books and found some parts to be quite similar, which made a lot of sense to me. I think we as humans have strived to answer the big questions. I think that love is a universal language. I think we lose sight of that and start judging others. We begin a dark descent into throwing stones and claiming superiority. I think that the U.S. was on a path to coming to terms with that, particularly when our ancestors implemented the separation of church and state to reflect the love and unity and respect of all people. And that struggle seems to be more apparent today when all the gains that have been made to create a more loving nation seem to be pushed into the past in favor of a warmongering country that grifts for the wealthy and takes away from the poor. It never ceases to amaze me in recent years when there have been school shootings. And maybe there were 14 that were killed, or whatever number. And of course, the survivors are interviewed. The standard answer is, yes, sorrow for the dead, and there, but for the grace of God, they were spared. I don't fault the person for saying that. It has become as common as thoughts and prayers. But what I hear, whenever I hear someone say those words are, God didn't really care about those 14. Honestly, it breaks my heart. If we have free will, then I think the saving of those children is in our hands. If we choose to just throw up thoughts and prayers and not act, it's on us. And when I hear someone say, because they want to give grace to the White House, that when they walk on the White House grounds, that God walks on the White House grounds, just as the man that wrote the Bible, they are a long stretch from speaking for God, in my humble opinion. In that humble opinion, I don't feel that God would take too kindly to a warmongering nation trying to shove a warmongering Project 2025 down people's throats. I see postings online now more than ever claiming the end times are near. It happens every time there are wars and rumors of wars. I know, because my dad told me they said the same thing to him back before World War II. He said that his belief was that each man would have an end time when he dies. He didn't believe so much that there would be this great awakening in time that has been reported for years and years. And people have grifted and even had people sell all their belongings that buy into that. My belief is that if there is a supreme being, then probably we're all praying to the same one. And if somehow, some way, we all started loving each other and stopped judging, then and only then would he think it time to pay a visit and celebrate. And now, just a word about this administration that has come in with a wrecking ball and claimed that global warming is a hoax. And when people see we have a sudden cold spurt with lots of snow, they'll say it was a hoax too. I'd say to the president and anyone else, talk to the professionals that you no longer have on staff. The oceans are not getting any cooler. The glaciers have not stopped melting at an alarming rate. Banning books, rewriting history, cutting off research funding doesn't slow down the truth. And last, but certainly not least, but dear to my heart, claiming there are only two genders flies in the face of medical evidence. Just look up the word intersex, and then imagine all the complexities and differences in between. And instead of making it hard on others in this world, recognize their beauty and individuality. Now I will share a personal story. I put that up to read it because I didn't want to leave anything out. This story had to do with me, and probably when I was in college, maybe about 3 years in. I went to school at night, so 3 years in of my first 2 year at college, it took me probably about 4 years to graduate. But amazingly, even though I was still partying and drinking and smoking during that time, I graduated magna cum laude in accounting, and I took all the courses that they had in data information systems. But in dealing with the idea of being gay and all this input about the Bible and from family, I wasn't the best at dealing with relationships. So in this particular case, this guy that I thought hung the moon, and understand when I would go out, when I first started going out, I didn't know how to interact with other guys, even though I knew I was totally attracted to other guys and had accepted that fact by then. I didn't know how to communicate in a way because I didn't feel comfortable with myself. So in a way that made the whole deal work. I was awkward as everything. But this guy, whom we had went out several times on a social level, we went to a couple of movies together. He had even come to my place. And of course, I think during that time, the one thing that brought us together was we smoked and drank too. And then we had some party functions. I went to a party of him and another friend of his and a girlfriend of the guy friend that he knew. And then we had some other functions that we went to. And all during this time, there was no physical contact. There was just talking, and I enjoyed his company tremendously. But anyway, he knew I was struggling with the issue, and so he had a friend that was a psychologist. She was a girl, and so probably because he gave me the card and he recommended her, that I was more in tune or thought the idea was great, that maybe in my mind I thought it would give me more insight to him. I don't know. But I did go to see her, and I shared quite a lot, and I even shared about my feelings for him and everything with her. I find it quite easy on a one-to-one level in sharing with people. So anyway, after, I don't know what time period it was, but we were at a function together. We weren't really together, we were separate, but we were at the same function. But then later on that night, we both, and I don't know how if it ended up, he came by my place and we went there, or I went to her place and he was there. Anyway, we were both at her place, this psychologist's place. And we were all sitting there talking and drinking, I think, maybe even smoking. I don't remember, or had been drinking. Maybe we weren't drinking there, but we had at this function we had been to previously. But then all of a sudden he bent over and he kissed her on the ear. And immediately I was like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong place. He's in love with her. And I was like, started all apologetically, I'm sorry. And I just said, probably it's not a good idea for me to see you, or, but I understand. And, I was all apologetic, and I left. and that was that. And I worked it over, and I didn't go back to see her because I realized that probably my intentions, I didn't know what my intentions were, but I knew at that time just the idea of her being with him and me not knowing that wouldn't be a good idea for me to be there. So that was fine. And then, I don't know the time period, then later on, it could have been a week or two, or I don't know. But it ended up, we were at my place, and we were watching probably Saturday Night Live, and of course smoking and drinking. And I remember I was at the TV. I don't know if I was turning it up or turned it down, probably turned it up, because if we were smoking, it wasn't loud. And anyway, he bent over and kissed me on the lips and said, "I love you." Well, immediately, this is what I had dreamed of, and I was like, this is happening, and I was on top of him like that. And I don't know if, I'm sure you've heard the story about, are you happy to see me, or is that a gun in your pocket? Well, I immediately got the impression that he wasn't happy to see me. So I jumped up. I was all apologetic, saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, of course. And he sat there for a couple of minutes, probably hearing me say, I'm sorry, over and over and over. And then he left. And I don't think after that period of time, I think we may have said 3 or 4 words to each other after that. We didn't talk. So, I just thought I would share that for you to let you know that maybe sometimes people aren't coping too well, and maybe cut them a little slack. But I think you'll find out that if you really talk to people that are not like you, whether it be race, gender, whatever difference there is, you will find out that we are more alike than different. So that is it. Peace out.